So with my artboard tool, I'm going to go into my properties, change it from 8.5 to 8. Go back to my rectangle tool, click once on the screen, and I want a 4x4 square. Use your selection tool to move that to the top left corner. Okay. So then take this part. Now we know it's 4x4, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to go up to Object, Transform, and before what we did was we did Move. Let's just go to Move. Later on we'll talk about the transform each, but let's go to Transform, Move, and instead of we'll type in, let's say vertical right now is going to be 0 because we don't want it to move into vertical. We want it to move horizontal, so we'll say horizontal. We'll type in 4. We'll type in 4. And it moves exactly 4 to the side. What we did was we changed our document artboard to 8 instead of 8.5. So we use Move, and then I press Copy. Now, we know that we need 2 underneath. So we don't need to select one, move it, and then the other, move it. We select both of them at the same time, right? So by using our selection tool, I'm going to select both of those objects. Go to Object, Transform, Move, and horizontal is going to be set to 0 now because we're not moving it left or right. And vertical is going to be what? 4, because it's 4x4. Click on Preview so you can see, and press Copy. Right? So we created one. Object, Move, we copied it 4 inches over because this is 4, so we copied it 4 inches over. Then we selected both of them at the same time. Object, Move, and we did a copy of 4 inches down. Now we have our 4 squares. So with those 4 squares, we're going to change our value and let me see, let me look at my blackboard just to make sure. And we'll do it like this. So, I mean, you can choose whatever color you want. Right now I have purple, green, orange, and blue. So we'll do that. Purple, green, orange, blue. I want to go to Window, Swatches, and under Swatches, purple, orange, green, and blue. And then I can select all of them, and I can take the stroke, set the stroke value to none. Stroke, none. Okay. Now, the next thing is I'm going to go into my layers, and this is our background, right? We set up our background already. So now in layer 1, I want you to double click on that word layer 1, and you can either type in the whole word background or you can just type in BG for background. And then I want you to lock it. We don't need to do anything else with those squares. Now that it's locked, we can't do anything. We need another layer. So we need to go down to the bottom of that layers palette, or you can go up to actually into the layers kind of options, select new layer, or you can go down at the bottom and type in new layer. So this new layer, we'll call this shapes. Now if you notice, the first layer was light blue. This layer is light red. If you want to do a different color, like maybe I'll put in magenta. So everything that's going to be on my shapes layer now will be highlighted with magenta when I select it. When you create a new layer, like if you double click on it, if you create the layer from the bottom, then you're going to have to, let me just move this up. If you create the layer from the new layer icon at the bottom, then you have to double click on it and change the color. But if you change it from here, if you create a new layer from the options box will show up. All right, so now we have our shapes layer, we have our background layer. What we are going to do is we'll take the same concept that we did, and I'm going to create this thing down here. This is the checkerboard, right? So let me go back here. All right. Let's create another layer and call this checkerboard. Okay, so what I want you guys to do, the first thing I want you to do is create a 0.5 inch square. So 0.5 by 0.5. Place that in the top left corner of that bottom of your screen, of that space. And you can make it whatever color you want. Now, because we're going to do multiple tiles, we're not going to use object, transform, and move, or transform again. What we're going to do is we're going to go to transform each. Okay, so in transform each, it pretty much is like a super palette, right? It has scale, move, rotate, all in the same dialog box, right? So I don't necessarily need any of the scales, but basically, if I wanted to, and this I just wanted to show you this, but if I wanted to, I could move it, scale it, and rotate it at the same time. I could reflect it on the X, I can reflect it on the Y, I could even make it a little bit more random. I can, scale all these different things. Now, let's push cancel real quick. I just wanted to show you this transform each, because this is what we'll do when we have, we want to apply multiple actions to the same object. I'm going to press cancel, and under object and transform move, it's not even, hold on, give me 1 second here. Where is the there's supposed to be. Alright, I guess we're gonna have to do it. We're gonna have to do it the other way. Because there was a way, effect, distort, transform. Okay, I think this is it here. Let me double check. Yes, okay. So let's go to effect, distort, transform. And this one, we're gonna choose transform here. And it looks like the same palette of transform each, but the only difference is, like when I went to object, transform each, it didn't have number of copies at the end. At the bottom is blank, right? So when I go to cancel and I go to effect, distort, transform, and transform, the only difference is this one adds the term copies. So what I want to do is I'm going to say, I know this is 0.5 by 0.5, so I want to move this, and we'll go horizontal first, right? So I want to do, I'm going to click on preview, and the move, I'm going to type in 0.5. So when I click on preview, you see it move next to each other, right? And what is double 0.5? Like what's, if I did 0.5 and 0.5, right, it's going to be 1. So instead of 0.5, because I'm going to skip because I want to put a different color right there next to it. So I'm going to type in 1 in the horizontal. And so every other space is going to put a pink box. And then in terms of copies, I would say maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So maybe 7. Let me type in 7. Not bad. Right? So 7 copies. And then I can press OK. Now, with your selection tool, drag a marquee selection around each one of those. Why is it? Is it all? This is the cool part. Because it's an effect, watch this. View, outline. So outline mode shows you all your vector shapes. We have 7 copies, but because we made it an effect, it's only looking at this first one as an instance. So the cool thing about effects is what they call them is non-destructive effects. So it doesn't add a bunch of shapes to your objects, and it doesn't make your file size heavier. It's just an effect. So all of the things that's happening is happening just because of this one shape, right? So now if I go back up to view, go to preview, and if I move that one shape, everything moves with it. Okay? So what I want to do is, I showed you earlier on how to duplicate something. If I hold Option, and I move to the right, basically what I did was I just duplicated that shape. So I can do something like this, but I'm not going to do that. Like I'm going to put it next to it because I want to change the color. You can change it to another color, whatever color you want. I'm going to use yellow. Okay, now, yes.
It didn't make me the spaces.
Did you press undo, which is Command Z? And when you go back up to effects transform, make sure that you are using 1 inch because your square is 0.5. Yep. Got it? All right, perfect. All right, now we can manually go through and say, okay, I'm gonna drag this down, move it over, drag this down, move it over, and that works perfectly fine. But the one thing that we're gonna do is let's just select the pink box. Let's go back up to effect, and then transform ends up being at the top right there, so you don't have to find it again. So you go to effect transform. Oh, actually, let me do select. Effect, restore transform, and it says apply new effect. All right, so yeah, well, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make sure we put apply new effect. So basically, it's another effect on top of that effect. In this case, I'm gonna put my copies back down to 1 for now, and I want this to. I'm gonna click on preview, and I want this to go down. So the vertical space is gonna go down 0.5. But instead of 1 in horizontal, it's going to go 1 in, 0.5 in both. Does that make sense? Because what's happening is it's only 1 copy of that row. It's 1 copy of that whole effect. So I didn't need 7 of them. I just needed 1 for now. And so 0.5 over and 0.5 down. Press OK. Same thing with the yellow. I go up to effect, transform, apply new effect, click on preview, and this one is going to be 0.5 down, and then instead of 0.5 over, it's actually going to be negative 0.5 because it needs to fill the spaces to the left instead of to the right. And then I press OK. So I've just created this pattern, and if I press or go up to view and view outline, I have 2 boxes. I only have 2 boxes that I created and generated this pattern shape. View, preview. Now with those 2 boxes, I can select them both by holding shift. And now we can use our transform again. So I'm going to go object, transform, and then I'm going to use the move. And horizontal is going to be 0. Vertical is actually going to be, if I type in, should be 1 inch, because each one is 0.5. So I do 1 inch. press copy. And then what do you think we're going to do again? Command D. So this is what it looks like in outline mode. I have 2, 4, 6 boxes. And this is what it looks like in preview mode. So those 6 boxes are controlling this whole grid, which is pretty cool. All right, now on that checkerboard layer, just make sure you lock it. And then in terms of organization, I want you to drag the checkerboard layer below the shapes layer and not on top of the shapes layer, because if shapes highlights blue, then it's going to put the checkerboard inside shapes. So if you go below, you'll see a blue line that's in between BG and shapes. And then you're reordering the layers. So far we know how to name our layers, we know how to group layers, or group shapes or objects in our layer. We know how to reorder the layers. We know how to save. We know how to create basic shapes. And we know how to duplicate in specific ways to create patterns. Okay? The last thing that we're going to try to focus on is this. These two I'm just gonna tell you verbally because I know you know how to do this. So I want you to in the center of the boxes, you'll create these shapes and it'll be centered within this box. Now I'm going to show you some the align palette so that you can center it. This particular shape, you can select it, you can rotate it. It can be a diamond shape. I'm not concerned about the angle of where you have it. I just want to know that you know how to rotate something, right? This one, I want to know that you can use the polygon shape and change different sides. So it doesn't have to look exact. You can add more sides, add less sides, but I want to see that you know how to change the sides of a shape. This one, we're going to use the ellipse tool to create this pattern from different points of rotation, right? So one we're going to rotate from the center, the other one we're going to rotate from the base, and then that's how we'll do our rotation. All right, so let's go back over here. On this side, let me pull up the book so you guys just can get an idea of what it looks like. Okay, here. So this particular one, and I don't want you to try it yet because I want you to do it on your own. On this particular one, you're going to get an ellipse tool, and I'll give you the values in a minute, but you'll do the ellipse tool, and then basically from the center, this is the center point, you're going to do what we did with the flower. You hold the option, or you don't even have to hold the option. You can go up to transform, rotate, and then once you rotate it to certain degrees, transform again, transform again, transform again. Okay? So you're going to do that with the ellipse tool, rotate that around. That's one. The other one, this one is a little bit different in terms of rotating from the base. And this is what we did with the flower. So we took this circle, hold option with the rotate tool, rotate from the base, transform again, transform again, transform again. The only difference, the reason why it looks different is because it's has a stroke and not a fill, and so you can see through it. And so because you can see through it, it starts to create these interesting patterns. Okay. But for the one that I have on my document, let me see if it's here. Come on. All right. Anyway, so the one I have on my document, basically, we're going to use. Let me grab AI circle and switch this. Okay, I'm not centering it yet, but I just want to show you what we're talking about. Okay, so basically what can happen here is, like, once you have like a let's say a circle shape, depending on where you do your rotation from, maybe it's here at the center, or maybe it's not. Like I'll do from the side like this, and I do rotation of, let's say, point, or I'll do, let's say, 1. Alright, new copy, and then what happened? 20, copy. Alright, so I do copy like that, and then I Command D all the way around. This is, anytime you do it like this from the edge, it's gonna be it has a center point like that. But then if I go back and let's say I do it like, I don't know, just off center, maybe here, and as I go through, copy, you see how it rotates and it leaves an opening? Like maybe if I do it like right close to the center like this, Option click, copy, it's going to have a bigger opening. If I do it close, maybe over here, Option click, it leaves that center like that. Now, the smaller the circle, you're able to get different results. Let's say 10. You see that? And that's, yeah.
I'm a little bit confused about centering it.
Okay.
Like
how to center it?
Yeah.
So to center this type of shape or the regular shape itself?
No, before you repeat it, just like the first couple steps.
Oh, okay. All right. So if I took this, you see, when I move my mouse, I can find the center with my mouse. But if I didn't feel comfortable with doing it like that, I can go up to View, Outline, and it shows me the center. And then that way, if I create, let's say I create this shape from the center by holding Option. Maybe something like this. Okay. you're gonna create it from the center, and then when I wanted to rotate it, let's say I do it from, let's say, this side here, or if I know that I want this to be centered and I want to, do it from the, rotate from the center, what I would do is I would take this shape and move it. Let's say I want that to be the center point. And so with my rotation tool, this is the center. Maybe I'll do it from view outline. That's the center. Hold Option from that center point of the square and copy. I did 10 degrees. Maybe I'll do 15 degrees just to open it up a little bit. Copy. Mandy. And so then that point is in the center of everything, because I moved the circle, slightly off center. Okay. Now, if you want to, like, once you duplicate so many shapes like this, in order for you to keep track of it, what do you think you're gonna need to do to move it all together?
Deselect background and direct select.
Well, you need to use your selection tool and make a selection around the whole thing. Object, group. You need to group it. You need to group it. Okay. The last thing I want to show you, because this is going to be this whole document, I want you to practice and create for homework. I mean, we did this checkerboard box below, but I want you to know how to do it. So I want you to go back and review it and practice it. But when you come in next class, I mean, this document should be finished and you turn it in. But when you come in next class, I'm going to ask you to recreate this thing from scratch. So you need to know how to do this. I'm giving you all the, the help and follow along right now, but you need to go back and practice. Because when you come in, I'm going to say, create all the 4 boxes, create the checkerboard, create this little spiral thing, create all the different shapes, recreate it to look like this, right? So, the last thing I want to show you is this little piece in between here. This is going to be, we're going to use this from the star shape, and we're going to make a star, and then we're going to modify the points. These 2 shapes, you can kind of freeform and do, what you want. But we just learned how to do the transform again, and then you guys know how to do those, and then this star shape I want to show you. All right, so in our shape tools, we're going to go down to the star tool, and again, if you double click, you can choose the amount of points. If you click once on your screen, and we're basically going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Now, if you want it to be more manageable, you can do a 4-point star and then duplicate that, and do another 4 points. So why don't we do that? It's a little bit more manageable. So instead of 8, let's do 4, and press OK. Now, I'm going to turn this white. So by default, if I press the D on my keyboard, that's my default colors, right? It's white fill and black stroke. With that, I go to my properties and I can take off the black stroke. So I set the stroke to none. Okay. So in this case, let me delete because mine came out the way that was my last. The settings that I have, which is pretty random. The radius 1 is like, I'll just say like 0.35, and then the radius 2, I'll just round it off to 0.7. I'll just do 0.75. And then I have 4 points, and I press OK. Okay. So the radius 1 is the radius on the inner radius. That's the radius right here on these inner points. The radius 2 is outer radius, right? And so if you want longer points, you can get an outer radius, you know, that's going to be longer, right? So we're going to duplicate this, and then we're going to use the scale tool. But if we wanted to, I'm just going to click off to the side to show you. If I wanted to get the outer radius longer, let's say I want this to be like, I don't know, 3 inches. So now it's going to be like that. All right? And I could take that, and I could use my rotate tool, rotate it, and just overlap it. But it's a little off, and then you have to try to get here and just move it over. And that's pretty much, you know, it's pretty much done. I could make the inner radius a little smaller and things like that, you know, preference or whatever. But you could do it like that. But what we're going to do is I want to show you how to scale different points. So let's select your the 4-point star that we have. I want you to do edit copy, and then normally you would do just like edit paste, but if you do edit paste, I'm gonna show you what's gonna happen. Don't do it. If I do paste, it's gonna paste out of position, and I don't want that. What I want it to do is I want it to paste in front or in back, it doesn't matter. But when you do paste in front or paste in back, sometimes even paste in place, it makes a copy in the same spot. And that's what we want. We want it to be in the same spot. And then we want to rotate it. I can double click on my rotate tool, and it's going to basically rotate 45 degrees. And I'll press OK. With this, I want to scale. First of all, I want to scale the points on the inner radius. I want to scale those down a little bit smaller, and then I want to scale the points on the outer. What happened? Then I want to scale the points on the outer radius to be larger. So I need the direct selection tool to do that. I need this tool. So I'm going to click on only, by holding shift, only the points that are on the inside. And I know that the points are selected because those are filled in, and the points that are white are not selected. Okay? Next, I want to go to my scale tool. And I'll double click on the scale tool because it's a little bit easier to control. And I'm going to click on uniform. And under uniform, if I just press my up and down arrow and preview is checked, it's going to interactively show me how those points are able to be scaled. And so I'm going to take that scale down to about, I don't know, about 55%. and then I'm just going to press OK. Now, with the direct selection tool, I'm going to select the outside points. So I click off to the side, then I select the outside points, holding Shift, double click on my scale tool, and using my up arrow, I'm going to interactively scale those points. Zoom out a little bit, maybe. Okay. And maybe I'll do it at 200% and press OK. And so I just created a graphic that looks like it's the same thing, but it's just two different shapes. But because it's the same color, it looks like it's the same. If I wanted to, make it a little bit thinner in here, I can just kind of go in and choose the shapes from, or the points from the other shape. Right now, it's a little bit harder to select because one is on top of the other, but I can simply do Object, Arrange, Send Backward, and now that shape is below this shape, and if I wanted to select those points in the inside and go to my scale tool, and it's at 200 right now, so if I just basically typed in, let's say 50%, it just kind of makes it a little bit thinner if that's what I wanted, or if that's what I was looking for. I press OK, and it just changes what it looks like. So it depends on what you want to do, how you want to portray it, but you can do that. You can also take points, hold Shift, and drag them if you want to do it a little bit more free-form, but then you're not guaranteed to have them at the same length and same distance and things like that. So, but you have a lot of control when using a direct selection tool, because you can move individual points. With the regular selection tool, it moves the whole object, so you don't have that control. Okay. So, basically, your homework is to study this, learn how to redo what we just did, right? If I just to take it all the way, rectangle, I'm creating a rectangle from the center, and to rotate it, I can double click on the rotate tool, or I can use my move tool to kind of rotate. I want you to make sure you know how to add a fill, add a stroke, and increase the stroke size. The stroke is over here. If I add a stroke to it and I increase the point size, understand how to put the stroke to the outside or the inside, right? So this one, the stroke right now is along the middle. If I click stroke, align stroke, I can change it to the outside. That's the inside, or I can change it to the outside. Now what that means is if I change the value, it only increases to the outside and it doesn't cut into the fill portion. But if it's aligned to the inside, when I increase it, the fill starts to go away. And it doesn't increase the size that's on the outside. If I were to change that to the center of the line, it's going to get bigger and the fill is going to go away. It's going to eat into the fill. So that's the benefit of doing a stroke to the inside or to the outside. Okay. So we have transform each, we have rotate, the polygon tool. If we're going to make a polygon tool or a polygon shape, we can do something like that, but we can also delete and click once and change the sides and the radius. Okay. Yes. This one over here. Okay, let me show you again. Have the ellipse tool, and with my mouse, I'm finding. Let me zoom in so you can see. With my mouse, I'm finding the center of that box. And if you can't really find the center of the box, you can always go to View, Outline. There's a center, the X point, and I can hold Option and Shift to create from the center. All right. And then with my selection tool, I can move this slightly off center, maybe about here. And then with my rotate tool, at the center of the box, not the center of the circle, but the center of the box, I'm going to hold Option and click. And then you can determine what the value is that you want to do. I'm going to do 45-degree angle just because, but I did 10, I did 15. If I press copy and then transform again, that's going to be a little bit more of a loose type circle. But imagine if you did that, selected that whole thing, and double clicked on rotate and said rotate that by half of that, which is like 22.5, and I press copy. And then maybe I change the color. Oops, change the color of the stroke. So now you start getting into a little bit more complex designs. So basically that's how we did it. And if I wanted to scale it, I can select it all, double click, uniform scale, maybe put it at 150, copy. And so it starts to get a little messy, but double click, instead of copy, I'll just press OK. Oops. 150. Okay. And because I moved it off center, that center point, the circle is in the center point of the box. And each one of these shapes are in the center point of the box. Any questions? It's a lot of information.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you repeat how you made the star thinner?
This star here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the outside both.
Like the inner part, the inner part? Okay.
How you just set them more narrow?
Yeah. So what I did was I took the direct selection tool, and let me just zoom in here. I took the direct selection tool and I clicked on one point, and then I hold shift to click on the other 3 points, and then I double clicked on the scale tool, and then in the uniform scale I just use my up and down arrow. I can type in numbers, but if I use my up and down arrow, I can interactively see how I want that to kind of get bigger or smaller. Okay. So just to recap for you guys, One, I want you to learn how to create the 4 boxes by duplicating those shapes, right? So create your document that's a certain size and be able to manipulate the artboard if you have to, like in terms of size. Be able to duplicate shapes so that you can have them line up and be even, create those 4 boxes. Name your layers and lock your layers, right? So be able to know how to do that, name them, lock them. Be able to use the object, transform, move menu, and also the effect, distort, transform, so that you can use that as an effect instead of just an action. Okay. Be able to create your shapes and do the transform each or transform again to create this type of spiral graphic, and then also control the rotation. Be able to control how you rotate a certain image, and be able to change the number of sides on your polygon shapes and your stars. The last thing is being able to manipulate individual points rather than the whole shape. And you need to use the direct selection tool, which is the white arrow tool, to be able to do that. Okay? Last but not least, I don't even know how to say it. Last but not least, you are going to put your name as a graphic. You're going to put your name at the bottom of this document. So that means that we're going to go into our artboard tools, increase the document size, and then we're going to put our name. Or you can do this. You can, in your layers, lock everything, make a new layer, and I'm going to use my rectangle or rounded rectangle, doesn't matter, and possibly create a white box like this and put your name inside that box. I'm going to take the stroke off. So, oops. I have a white box. I can run that off to the side like that. And then you can put your name here by, get the type tool, click once. This is the size, so let me bring the size up so you can see it. Hello? Did it freeze? Something happened. There we go. So you can do something like that. Or you can make the artboard longer and then put, a space for your name down there at the bottom or the top, wherever you want to do. And I just want you to be able to incorporate your name into your design. All right, any questions? All right, so this will be due first. The first thing is make sure that you turn in your artboard for the pencil and everything like that. Turn that into Blackboard, and then next you'll come in with this thing done. You don't have to turn anything in right away, but actually, you know what? That's what I want you to do. Turn this in before class Monday. Tuesday. Before class Tuesday, you turn this in, and then when you come in, I'm going to ask you to recreate it. Let me take that back. Recreate it. Practice. This is a practice. When you come in, I'm going to ask you to recreate this thing. It'll be a little bit different, but I'm going to ask you to recreate the one that I make for you. And then that one that you do in class, that's the one you're gonna turn in with the one you did for, the one that we just did in class. So you have two of them. Okay? So over the weekend, don't turn anything in. You'll turn it in class. That's it. Get out of here. But if you have any questions on anything, I'm